Public CEO Report is a podcast that provides insights about the public sector and public policy for the benefit of decision makers and leaders powering our communities. I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by Monique Carter. She's the Marketing and Economic Development Manager for the City of Fontana. Monique, welcome to the Public CEO Report.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for making this happen. First of all, where is the beautiful city of Fontana?
So we are in Southern California. We're about 40 miles east of Los Angeles. So we are right smack dab in the center of all things amazing.
And how long you been at the city?
I've been to the city now 4.5 years. So I've been most of my career in municipality, but this is my first run in the city government.
All right, great. And then finally, so you head up with marketing and economic development. Tell me what that means. What is your job? What are you trying to get done for the city and for the people of Fontana?
So as a marketing and economic development manager, it just means I talk a lot. I handle all things communication. So websites, social media, all of the speaking engagements, high profile events, you name it. If it generally includes talking, it runs through my shop. But I also head up our economic development efforts as well, which is all things business development. So kind of from the resident perspective as well as the business perspective is my area of expertise.
Well, your work is near and dear to my heart, given the work that we do at Tripepi Smith. So it's great to have you on today. One of the reasons I reached out to you is I learned through the grapevine that the city of Fontana had deployed Salesforce. And that's a big CRM software, customer relationship management software, or in our local government circles, we might call it constituent relationship management software. But it is a big software package that is normally reserved for Fortune 500 companies, and they try to go down market into smaller businesses and mid-sized market. But almost exclusively, I've always heard it used as a tool for business. So I was super interested to understand how Fontana was putting the platform to work in your city. So let's start out with a high level question, which is, how are you guys using Salesforce today?
So we have a couple of different products that they offer. One is Marketing Cloud. So that was the way we started, was with Marketing Cloud. And then we worked our way into the CRM system. And then we also now have deployed the 311 system. So we sort of had a slow iteration over a course of about 3 years. But this isn't my first experience with Salesforce. In another municipality, I was exposed to only the CRM side of it. So once coming on board, it was, I was able to offer at least a little bit of information about what was possible. So, but like I said, we started with Marketing Cloud and branched our way out from there.
And I assume that you got there, was this through an RFP process, or did you sole source this because it was kind of the only game in town?
So it was a closed RFP. So we did our research first to see who could supply what it was we were looking for. And in all actuality, when we looked at started with Marketing Cloud, we went to our existing provider and said, "Can you do these things that we're looking for?" And they said, "Unfortunately, not in the way that you're wanting them done." It was going to be a little bit more of a Frankenstein situation, and I needed something much more smooth. And so we went ahead and did a closed RFP, looking for very specific partners as well as very specific functionality. So that was how we got on board with Salesforce.
And so I heard you mention 3 modules. I heard 311. So that's like information services. People can call in, ask questions, or use a chatbot to engage with content that helps them do that kind of information stuff. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's our kind of a one-stop shop for all things requests. So if you're want to report graffiti, or you want to say that there's an encampment of some kind, but you want some sort of response, that's the starting point, is 311.
Okay. And then the Marketing Cloud, is that, I don't know what that is. So is that email campaign management and email address management and some sort of website integration stuff, or what does that do?
So all of the above. So it's email management as well as text messages. There's a website component. I don't use that as much just because we have our own website and we have developers that are here on staff. But yes, it is exactly what you just mentioned. It's an email marketing system. So if I want to send an email to a certain segment of my population list, or if I want to send something to do some A/B testing, I can do that all via Marketing Cloud.
Okay. And so I think for other folks, they might equate that with Gov Delivery or with Constant Contact or with MailChimp. Is that fair?
That's correct.
All right. And then you mentioned the middle one, which I think is the constituent relationships content, right? Where it's, I guess, more extensive. I I think what it is the more extensive CRM. Is that correct?
That's correct. I call it the guts of my system. So that's where everything is built on. I needed something that would give me a 360-degree view of my resident and or of my customer. So not only when the guts of it is all of their contact information. So whether it be their email, cell phone number, address, what their email preferences are, all of that sits in the CRM. And so as I'm sending emails out, and I want to send an email only to the constituents who are interested in, for example, commission meetings, then I can send them that information and then produce what we call a journey. And a journey is completely email automated system. So, or email automated journey. So I can have much more customized experience to my resident based on what's interesting to them.
Interesting. So theoretically, I think in my head, what that means as a recovering chief technology officer is if I'm Ryder Smith and I'm in your system, and I use the 311 to try to get an answer to a question or submit something, or I receive an email from you and then I open that email and click on a link in that email, or I call the front desk and speak with somebody about a question I have on a permit, each one of those interactions shows up in that customer relationship module so that any member of the team that has access to Salesforce can go in and say, oh, this Ryder guy's really been poking around on these issues and we've followed up diligently on the items that he's been raising. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was exactly what we were looking for. I needed something that would give me a full degree, really to understand what people were interested in, what they were concerned about. And so to your point, and if I'm making phone calls, if I'm reporting graffiti, if I'm, having questions about something else, if I'm maybe developing or putting in a patio in my backyard that needs to be permitted, all of these things are visible to the folks on the back end. We do have a dashboard that all of our department heads have access to, that they can then see where all of the reports coming in. Is it ebbing and flowing? What are people saying? What are people concerned about? In some certain cases, it may be a code enforcement issue that you see an influx of what's happening with code. Sometimes it may be homeless encampments. What are the things happening? What are the things that we can use the information for to get in front of? So, but to your point, that's exactly what it was intended to do.
Wow, that is a tremendous amount of data. So what, maybe I'll go back a second. So it sounds like you were certainly familiar with using a system like Salesforce as you came into the job. So you had experience. Is that partly how you gravitated back to Salesforce? Was you just had the native experience to better inform your fellow management team about why this was a good approach?
No, actually, it was I was looking for a new. And I shouldn't say it is. I wasn't looking for a new system. I was just looking for a better system, something that would satisfy what it was I was trying to accomplish. So I was really more outcome focused. With my experience when we did the demo with Salesforce, it sort of reawakened all of those bells and whistles that I recalled, because what we were looking at in terms of the demo and what I was familiar with had leapt forward probably tenfold. So this gave me an opportunity to look at it and say, oh, this is something that's interesting. I think the thing that stood out for me most is that Salesforce, my description of it, is built like Legos. So I can build what I want, how I want it, without I don't have to code. So I'm basically building the things that are needed as we expand and as we move forward. So, but it was really, I was looking for, to answer your question, I was looking for specific functionality, and Salesforce was the best representative to do that. But I was familiar with it, so it helped inform that decision, but that was kind of the way we ended up with it.
Wow. And in my experience, this kind of software is only helpful if lots of people have access to it. So who has access to it at the city? It sounds like, I mean, in some ways, this has to go all the way from people in the field who are addressing a pothole that's been reported into econ dev and over to community development and so on and so forth. So is everybody in City Hall, do they have access to it?
So most everybody has access to it, but they have access to it in varying degrees. So to your point, because Salesforce is so customizable, it's integrated in other systems, but it has not replaced that system. So if I was using our Public Works Department as an example, they use a system called Lucity, but Salesforce speaks to Lucity. So the exchange still takes place, but my Public Works workers don't have to know Salesforce. They still work in Lucity, but me as a person looking at the front end information can still glean the information that's happening in Lucity. So to your point, there's a lot of people that have access to it, but they may not know that they have access to it because they're still working in their native systems.
So there's been a bunch of API integrations that connect the Salesforce as kind of the center point glue into various systems across Fontana.
Correct.
So like same in community development, is there an online permitting system that talks to your Salesforce application?
Yes, they use Acela, and so Acela does the same thing. It speaks to all the things that are happening in Acela speaks back. Our code enforcement is probably the most prevalent example because there's so much going back and forth with direct contact with the resident and on a very intimate level. So it's Acela speaks to Salesforce, which then speaks to my marketing cloud. So if somebody is to report something or they report a complaint of some kind, an abandoned vehicle as example. Then I can see that, especially if it needs to be escalated, obviously it will get escalated to the city manager's office, but I can go back and see the history of what the conversation was based on what was put in Acela. I can see that in Salesforce to then help inform the response to the constituent.
Mm. Does the system, I mean, there's a million questions now. This is all prompting. So I'll try to stick with some high level basics too. So it's now been licensed up across multiple modules. I assume every time you add a module, it adds some incremental licensing cost.
Yes.
And then each seat typically has a licensing fee. So, maybe in roundabout numbers, what are you paying per seat per year for access to the Salesforce system? And what does that translate into aggregate numbers just to get a sense of sizing for organizations?
So our seats right now, we have about 60 seats for 60 licensing seats. So that's obviously we have a good portion of that sitting in our IT department as well as our department heads and city manager's office. So all together, so I'm phrasing this because there was a lot of helpful things that we were able to do. So when we brought this on board, it was right after COVID. So what we were able to do was ARPA money to sort of switch out some of the projects that was initially slated for ARPA funding to say, hey, no, this qualifies. So we were able to use this particular platform to be funded through ARPA. The initial budget for all things included, kind of lock, stock, and barrel, was right around $3 million.
Okay. So
yeah.
So that was the initial, which I assume was a bunch of integration and setup and configuration. You probably brought in third-party consultants to help with that through some Salesforce partnership,
Yes.
especially for those API connections and things like that. And then I assume there was at least first-year licensing or a couple years of licensing in there.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of like what the recurring cost is going to be going forward? Is that, I mean, in my head, I always think of Salesforce as like around 100, 120 bucks a seat per month is roughly my head, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, you're about right. In terms of I'll have to pull the numbers, but it's because we're looking at adding additional seats. So we're adding additional seats and additional modules. So what we budgeted going forward is kind of an if and then, at least that's what we're planning for, kind of an if and then situation. But you're right. In terms of the dollar amount per seat, it's about $150 a seat.
Okay. So, I mean, rough last speaking, if you're doing 60 seats, you got 150 bucks a seat, you're at $9,500 a month or 9,000 bucks a month.
Right.
And then 12 times a year is roughly how that all comes out to.
Correct.
Okay. And you said department heads have access. So they have a dashboard that gives them some insights on customer service issues and items to address for their organization. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'd probably say I'm the one that's the most integrated into the system is our public works department, as well as our building and safety. So building and safety also oversees our code enforcement. So I'll give a shout out to both departments that they are very, as much as technology sometimes is, sort of pushed away, they have embraced it and really, sought to understand how it's working with their existing systems and how they could use it to then bolster the existing services that they provide.
And why, I guess that does speak to like one of the biggest challenges I've learned about CRM is it can be one of the most difficult rollouts. Partly, I think that relates to the fact that usually you're rolling out for a Salesforce. Of course, cities don't really have Salesforces, but everybody is selling good customer service at City Hall. So I get that. And salespeople are notorious for not wanting to use software, right? They just want to be out shaking hands, kissing babies, and closing deals. And entering data into a system is not their idea of fun, nor is it going to get them a bigger commission. So, all respect to my sales peeps. So I guess my question is here. It's a different culture, different organizational implementation. What was that like? What was the conversation like around, hey, we want to implement this software, guys. Let's embrace this. How do we culturally drive that? What role did the elected leadership play in supporting it, or the city manager's office? Give me your take on that, because that changing people changing behavior is one of the most difficult things in the world.
So it was kind of the perfect storm, at least to my benefit. So it straddled two city managers. And so it started with our former city manager, his name is Mark Denny. So it started under him, who was very much a proponent, and then it came over to obviously to our current city manager, Matthew Ballantyne. And so he sort of inherited it, but it was my job, as I'm going to affectionately call the professional handholder, all the way through. And as I mentioned, we started with Marketing Cloud, so that was solely held in my shop. So it was just me and my team are the only ones who really needed to know and understand it. And then I could then, as as they always say, teach the teacher. Excuse me. So I'm teaching all of my other subsequent departments that would be using it. That part is much easier because I can offer, sales when they need, or services when they need services, when they need to be instructed on something or trained on something. I can do that, just internally. That doesn't require anything outstanding. But when we started to get to the larger integrations, which was the CRM system, that was the one that took a lot more hand-holding. So I had to go around to each department. So literally, it was probably a 4 or 5 month process to every single department to explain, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how it will help the city as a whole. I think that helping to understand the why was critical for me. One of the mandates that I have is to help enhance the perception of the city. That starts with customer service. I can tell you Fontana is amazing all day, every day, but if you have a bad customer service experience, then no matter what I say or how many times I say it, you're not going to believe me. So I needed to have that front door, that front facing, when as soon as you walk in the door, that I know who you are, and I know what you're struggling with, and I can help to facilitate that process. So I had to employ kind of that same process with my internal folks. I need to make sure that they felt like they had good customer service within the economic development and marketing communications department. So I had to handhold them all the way through and help them understand how they contributed to the larger picture. And so that was very critical in helping with the rollout. I'm not going to say the rollout was completely, error-free and we didn't have any issues. There was still some pushback, as with any new technology.
Sure.
We start the process and everybody's like, okay, I'm on board. But then when you get under the hood, then it's like, oh wait, you wanted me to do what? And so that was where I had to sort of take a step back and say, okay, let's go with additional training. Let's, really, I take my hat off to my IT analyst, who was really instrumental in helping me through this process of, helping to show what's possible technically, especially when it started off like, okay, I only want to do this much of it. Like, I know there's a lot that it can do, but I only want to do this much. And so what was helpful for us is that once that one little bit, you got comfortable with that one little bit, another department said, I want to do that one more little bit. And they kept expanding. So I take my hat off to my my police department, as they were kind of the kickoff to say, oh, wait, we can get rid of our hotlines. I don't have to have hotlines anymore. I said, no, you don't have to have hotlines. And so that became code enforcement, who said, I don't have to have hotlines either. And said, no. So it just kind of kept multiplying in that way.
I would assume, especially with dashboards in general, which provide more visibility. I mean, part of this is there's just a lot more visibility about follow-up on execution on items and requests. Is that, how's that going over?
So that initially, I think the person that was the most concerned about that was our city manager. He said, can you manage all of these? Is the system going to crash at any point that it's going to then now lose all of this data? And I said, no, it's not going to crash. We have backup systems upon backup systems. But that's exactly what it does. It provides more visibility, obviously from a department head standpoint, but even from line staff, that they can see we've configured our backend system, which we've done this via SharePoint. So you don't necessarily have to have a Salesforce license to see the information. But yeah, it says, this is where all of this happens, what has happened with this customer, where do we go from here? And it did illuminate some errors, I shouldn't say errors, but some issues in which we needed to really kind of circle in on and make sure that we had a definitive process. Forms and because now we've configured it to handle our forms and applications as well. And so now you can go in and see, okay, how was this application, received? Was it approved, or whatever the application itself was? We use it specifically for our public records requests. So we can see, okay, this has been handled, this has moved on to the next person that it needs to go to. So there's a lot of different application uses and a lot of different workflows, but yeah, it was working the way that we wanted it to.
Does the city have a financial ERP package that it uses, and is that also integrated to Salesforce, right? So how your finance department is on board with this or using some of it?
So our finance department is still using the previous system. They have not yet come on board with it. There's some API issues that we've been trying to work through. So that's still I'm going to say a hurdle for my IT analyst, that he's still trying to climb that mountain. But yeah, as it stands right now, that particular system is not integrated.
And I assume Salesforce wouldn't become the accounting system. Like they will still have a separate accounting system, correct?
I would assume so. I've not researched to see what products were available from a finance perspective. I'm sure I would have to assume just the size of it, that they've thought about it in some way, but I've not done the research on it.
Yeah, all these software systems end up kind of wanting to be bigger, stronger, faster, and up doing everything under the sun at some point. It's the nature of the beast, right? They always just want to go bigger and expand market share, and suddenly they can leverage in from CRM over into ERP and inventory management, supply chain management, and they're after they go.
I will say that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So you've made reference a couple of times to IT staff and a IT analyst. So maybe that's certainly obviously part of the ongoing cost, and total cost of ownership is a real thing when it comes to software. So there's clearly software licensing costs. You had a bunch of upfront costs for some licensing, and more importantly, all the integration work, which can be tremendous. And I mean, to be honest, in Salesforce, I mean, it's not cheap, right? Like, it's not cheap to run. Doesn't mean it's not worth it, but it is pricey. So, but it sounds like now you have some IT staff that are helping support it. So is that a couple IT staff who just focus on Salesforce integrations, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that is my dream. I have had several conversations with our IT director say, do you know what would be great is if I had just dedicated Salesforce staff. But no, unfortunately, they are not solely dedicated to Salesforce. So there's 3 people that support in various different capacities, for whether it be form building or integrations, or just general problem solving, troubleshooting. But there's 3 total that have really helped to move this along.
Okay, so time slices of 3 different people involved to help support it, and they've really gone through their own kind of Salesforce management and administrative training to get into the guts of it, and they can really manage that application. Is that a fair description?
That's fair. I will say that I'm very grateful. We also have an implementation partner, and so the implementation partner was critical in sort of teaching us as well. So once the system was built, they said, okay, let's take a step back. I'm going to train you on what we did so that you can take it and carry it forward.
Okay. I mean, I won't consider it an endorsement, but would you state the name of the implementation partner just so that people have that information?
Stack Nexus.
Okay. And how do you spell that?
STACK NEXUS.
Oh, Stack Nexus. Okay. Very good. So timeline, you started using the marketing when?
2022.
2022. And then you rolled out the other 2 modules at the same time later?
Yeah, so very close, they sort of stair-stepped on one another. So we started, once I got Marketing Cloud kind of up and running, and then we immediately launched into the to 311, and then to the CRM, and then into 311. So I'd venture to say between 21 was all things like discovery, build out, testing, Q&A, all of those things. And then we actually went live in 2022. And then after that, we rolled out the CRM. That was less of a fanfare. The 311 was more of the fanfare, where it was announced at State of the City, and Mayor did some video and some announcements around it. So they kind of, once from 2022 to 2023 was the sort of the heavy lifting of the rollouts.
Right. And I mean, obviously or perhaps not obviously, the 311 is a big public facing aspect of that. Whereas the internal CRM management, contact record management, that's for internal use. That's really not a public facing element. I generally assume, short of what they might get access to the marketing module, the public isn't really have the opportunity to come in and edit their profile or change their contact information, correct?
That's correct. That's done via the Marketing Cloud. So if you go at the bottom of my emails, from time to time, I'll put, update your email preferences, so they can update their email preferences / contact information. But beyond that, much of that is done based on their actual activity that it shows up in there.
And does the city have utility services you offer that would help you expedite the seeding of contact information and records, or are you kind of at the mercy of when people have signed up for emails to actually start creating those constituent records?
So actually, it comes in a couple of different ways. So when they do the request, so that via 311, it filters into the CRM, which then gets to all of the contact information. Or if they're sign up via email, or if they download the app. It's all speaking to the same place.
Okay. But essentially there's the only time you have a contact record of somebody is if they've actually interacted or engaged with the city on something.
That's correct.
So if I move fresh to the city, I don't suddenly appear in your system. They have to have some point of contact with the city to create this information.
That's correct.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? That's logical. So do you have a sense of how many people at this point, how many constituents are, and you know, that's also could be a misnomer because they could be outside the city limits theoretically, but how many people are in the system?
So for my subscribers are right around 29,000.
29,000 people. All right. And now you must have incredible analytics about how often people are interacting with City Hall, who your superpower users are that are using lots of services and engaging. And those are just kind of one-offers that, you know, figure out when the dog park is open for hours and then they're pieced out, right?
Mm-hmm. So yes, you have, I mean, I like your point to the power users even from a constituent standpoint, you have those who are very familiar with the 311 system and can kind of do it without, just like how you would normally operate text messages, half looking at it, already knowing where things are. And then you have some that are just kind of maybe novice. I'm dipping in my toe just a little bit here and there. But yeah, so people run the gamut, and because we have accounted for people who don't want to engage with technology at all, we have 311 agents. So you can dial 311 as long as you're in the Fontana city limits. You can dial 311, and it'll get you to a customer service agent who will then talk you through or maybe put in the request for you.
And that 311 agent, I presume, like when that person calls in, they are able to bring up their prior contact record and know who they're talking to and see that they previously had an issue with maybe a dog license or something like that they were working on. And they can say, oh, Sally, it's so good to see that we were able to resolve everything well with your dog. Did that issue get resolved? I mean, is that part of the point of this integration? Is that level of attention to detail?
So we're still getting to there's some clunky pieces within that we actually had a call this morning that we're working to smooth out. But that's more of a technology piece but the folks who actually call, because it's not, press 1, press 2, it's hello, you've reached, Fontana 311. But yes, they can look at it. So either they give them a case number. We do have some folks that prefer to remain anonymous. And so they say, okay, let me pull up the case number and see what's happening with the case. But if you provide your name, yeah, we can look it up and see exactly what happened. Look and see what the conversation was on the internal, to say, hey, this is still outstanding. Maybe parts were ordered, parts are on back order, that kind of thing, to communicate what's happening. If it gets too far in the details and full transparency, we do refer it off to the department.
Sure.
Our 311 agents are not well versed in, all things technical. So it's much easier to say, hey, I can see who's working your case. Let me get you off to that department. And then they have that conversation.
Oh, impressive. So here you are with nearly 30,000 contact records and a pretty extensively deployed platform and API integrations. What have been the big wins from your perspective? What are those aha moments you've been through, or your city managers had, or department head has had, where they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing since apple pie?
I would say kind of the big aha moments was for my our department heads, particularly our deputy city managers, to be able to see just the sheer volume of what's coming in and what's being requested, what's being handled. I don't know. I'm sure they had, some sort of inkling as to what that looked like. But to have hard numbers across all divisions, I think was a very large aha moment, as well as being able to see where the things are that are being what areas of the city that is things are being focused in on. So we've now run several different dashboards to be really kind of understand, are folks calling in the core? Are they calling in more in the north? Are they calling in more in the south? Who are my more engaged residents? So I think that was probably, at least for me, one of the big wins, to be able to understand what folks were interested in and because obviously with a customer service system, we've not been able to.
Don't worry, take a water break. We'll support it. It's okay around here.
We've not been able to get that level of detail before. And so before we were kind of leaning on social, whereas, social is, just like it's intended, it has a different intended use. And so in this case, it was really helpful for us to see, where are folks kind of circling in on, what are the things that they're most, concerned about. And so these are the things that we're now able to put hard and fast numbers around and hard and fast data to say, these are things going forward that we may want to engage a little bit more. I use our public works department. And so now I can see, one of my job duties is we put together the annual report. And I can go through the annual report and say, okay, for potholes, there were 5,175 potholes that we filled in 2024. I don't have to go back to the department to ask that information. I can pull that at a whim, especially when we're looking for data for maybe a press release or for a press response. I have that data kind of at the ready without having to, go back to the department and have them kind of, go pull their own information. It's already there. So I think for me, that is a big one.
So that data, and I love that, like metrics and having reportable data inside public organizations is notoriously difficult to kind of come up with, in part because just a lot of disparate systems that are either not connected or not fully implemented. And so pulling data out of them proves difficult, or they just don't have the data consolidated in a way that's easy to report. So is there a monthly dashboard report that's going to the management team to give them all the key metrics that are going on? Does that ultimately get exposed to the city council? And even more so, or perhaps even further edgy, does it show up in a public dashboard report that's like showing the community what's going on?
So it has not yet. We've recently deployed the dashboard. So when I say recently, within the last 2 weeks. And so we've not put together the cadence of how it goes. Right now, it's just been going out to an email that I send out to my city manager and say, this is what we're doing.
Sure.
But the goal is, yes, to be able to send that out to any and everyone who wants to listen. We've got a variety of different platforms that currently get used. And so I want people to know, that's kind of my job. I tell people that words that shall not be uttered to Monique because I did not know. And so it's one of those things that as much as I'll give you, as much as I'm willing to meet you whatever information you're looking for is what I will provide. These are the different types of things that we would, from a government standpoint, we really want to make things much more transparent. I take my hat off to council because that is the heart of council. I said, Monique, we want to show what we're doing. As Mayor Warren says, I don't want people to say we are the best kept secret. So I'm tired of being a secret. And so that is for me is let's shout it from the rooftops, the things that Fontana has been able to accomplish. And I can do that via Salesforce.
Interesting. You had mentioned you were in a previous agency that was using Salesforce. To the best of your knowledge, are they still using it?
I don't know. I've not kept in contact to see how. I don't know. And now that I think about it, they may not, because you're right. It is quite an investment, and all the folks that were power users have all since gone to different agencies. I think 2 of them have taken Salesforce with them when they went to their different agencies as well. But I'm not positive if they still utilize it.
And have you found yourself in a cohort of other city government agencies where you're talking with fellow government agencies about their use of Salesforce? Like, is there a user group out there or something along those lines?
Not really a formal user group. It's just kind of those of us who are, so that I've spoken a couple of times at Trailblazer events, which is a Salesforce government event, government summit specifically for Salesforce. So I've had an opportunity to speak with other agencies that are using it. There's some that are using it that put me to shame that they have 9-person teams that solely focus on Salesforce. Utah is one that comes to mind. There was a young lady that she works in one of the, I forget the city, but she's based in Utah. They have a full 9-person team. Any new software that's pulled out is started with Salesforce. The city of Los Angeles uses Salesforce. So I don't want to say a formal group. It's just kind of those of us who are kind of know the system. Long Beach uses it. And so we kind of keep in contact with one another, have conversations. Hey, did you run into this issue? Can I troubleshoot something with you? And kind of go through and understand how they're using it, what their use cases were, and kind of adjust accordingly.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, if you go to the Fontana website, does a resident have like a 311 chat experience that they can engage in there that allows them to ask questions of that 311 module, or how does that work?
So yes, it's not on on the website, you would go to 311, but the 311 is a separate system. So it is not part of the website. It is a separate system. So there is an app that you can engage with a chatbot. You can engage via email. So we have for the entry points is the chatbot, the 311 telephone, the app, as well as the and I think I said email and the website itself.
Okay. And then is some of that chat experience first layered in with some AI at this point to try to pull off official records and provide a chat bot experience before it actually cuts over to a human being?
That's correct. So that's the way that it starts. It's going to ask you like, what are your services or what is your request? And then kind of start you from there and then filter you into where you need to go.
Yeah. I like the chat experiences I find supremely interesting for all. I mean, it's used a lot by private sector, but for public sector in terms of the sheer efficiency of triaging customer resident inquiries, and then ultimately having customer service folks who can support 5 or 8 or 10 simultaneous chats because it's all asynchronous and they can be moving around between all of them and trying to help people out expeditiously and provide just a level of customer service that is kind of what big Fortune 500s provide, right? When they try to interact with them. Maybe in some ways you want to say better because at times it probably feels like you're just talking to a wall when you try to deal with some of the big companies out there. Whereas I'm sure in Fontana, they try to have a very resident focused and positive experience.
Very much so. We're at the point right now that we're working on what I would call process improvements. Like I mentioned, there's some parts of it that are still a little bit clunky that I would like to smooth out. And so we're working, troubleshooting different things to help smooth out that specifically the chatbot experience and the phone experience. So if you want, you don't, it's after hours perhaps, because I don't want to make the assumption, people know that the assumption that we are not 24 hours, but you can still put in a request. And so I still want you to have that same level of customer service, even if you're not talking to an actual person.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Any other big aha lessons learned that you'd love to share with an audience of local government folks and city manager types?
I would say for me, an aha moment was the taking along the departments as you go. So I'm a very big proponent is that people will have better buy-in if they can see it along the way. So for me, that was an aha moment. I've been a part of, enterprise systems integrations before, but nothing of this magnitude. And so if anybody decides that they want to embark on this, I would definitely say, make sure you bring along the folks that are going to be in the system with you. Make sure that they fully understand what this is going to look like so that there's not after the fact, like, I didn't know this is far more complex than I thought. And so that would be my encouragement as well as, words of advice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's excellent advice. We started out this conversation that part of the point was to create a elite customer service experience for Fontana residents and constituents and stakeholders who are interacting with this city. Is there, do you guys have any sort of biannual survey work you do where you've had an opportunity to actually gauge impact of the customer service experience, or is there automated customer service surveys that go to folks who interact with you later to get a sense of feedback on that or anything along those lines?
Not yet. There's a financial limitation for that just yet. And so that is on the docket, at least on my wish list. We have a customer service survey that goes out. It's an always on survey. It's through a platform called Zen City, where it's really intended to understand, what people are concerned about. What are they, just in general, because I have some open-ended questions as well as some statistically valid questions that I have to ask. But that's where the customer service came from. Part of the customer service component in terms of like a feedback loop, what people are experiencing. But to your initial question, I don't have one yet. A specific survey to speak to the task that was requested, that has not yet been implemented.
Interesting. I asked because I do a reasonable amount of strategic planning work for government agencies and goal setting. And one of the consistent items that comes up is the customer service experience at City Hall and trying to either give staff tools to be more effective at customer service, create a better user experience, which sometimes means it's not about people, it's about software that helps do that. We do kind of live in an era where some people, if they never have to talk to a human, they're okay with it. Sad, but true. And on the other hand, that when they do interact with the human being, is at least able to carry on information and make it appear as if like, oh yeah, this is just I know who you are, I know what your issues are. I'm familiar. I'm not having to have you re-explain everything for the third time to the third department you've been transferred to. So I know there's an appetite out there in the local government world for improved customer service experiences at City Hall. And it sounds like you've been a real innovator and leader in trying to lead with that mentality and develop that at the City of Fontana. And I have to presume at least some of the surveys and sentiment of what Zen City is finding, or just anecdotal stories, you've had some positive experiences so far.
Yeah, very much so. For transparent, one of the things I use the information for is for my social media. So this information that comes back from the survey usually tells me what people want to know more information about.
Mhm.
Well, now I can now put that information out via social media. I can push it out via email, just so that people have a better sense of, oh, I was thinking about that. So now let me push that out. So I'm deeply grateful for all of the softwares and things that have helped to with all of my customer service experiences, and really making sure that the people know what's available, what's out there, how the city of Fontana is really helping to really make sure that they have all of the tools necessary to get the information that they need.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up on with that. Let me ask a quick question. If people want to get in touch with you and discuss this amazing experience you've had and insights, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
It's mcarter@fontanaca.gov.
All right, plain and simple. Well, thank you. That is today's report. My thanks to Monique for joining us, from the whole PublicCEO team and myself, Ryder Todd Smith. Thank you for your time. We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the PublicCEO Report. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing across all of our platforms so you never miss out on this great content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon Music.